Hello, my favorite 7th graders. Welcome back. If you're following along at home, we're in 8-7, the second edition of this book. We're talking lesson 38 today. We're going to be talking about interpreting graphs. So what I'm going to do is actually use my book quite a bit. So let me get this organized here. Oh, and straighten that out. All right. So for those of you following along at home, I'm on page 228, and I am talking about. Let me get my act together. Story of my life. Joke's on me, I'm not gonna get my act together ever. Okay, so we're gonna talk about, so this one is interpreting graphs, okay? Interpreting graphs. As I mentioned, we're on page 228. The first example that we have here says, use the information in this pictograph to answer the following questions. Let me use my pointer here. Each little round bit represents, let me see if this helps. Represents 10,000 donuts. You see that there? Bam, 10,000 donuts. That's how many I had for breakfast this morning. Just kidding. In January, we had 1, 2, 3, 4. So we had 40,000 donuts, right? In February, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we had 60,000. Do you see how we're multiplying there? March, we had 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, and then a half. So 55,000 donuts. About how many donuts were sold in March? Again, 55,000 donuts. About how many donuts were sold in the first 3 months of the year? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and a half. So the way that we would write that is 15 and a half, so 15.5, right? Times 10,000. Well, that just means we need to move our decimal over. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 spots over. So we're gonna go 15.5. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4 spots over. And we have a decimal there. So what that means is we have 155,000. We sold about 155,000 donuts were sold in the first 3 months. Okay, so then let's look at example number 2 down here. This one says the number of aluminum cans collected by each homeroom. Let's see. So about how many cans were collected by the students in room 14? Well, we see that the room numbers are at the bottom. So room number 14 here comes all the way up, and they collected about 8,000 cans. 8,000 cans. For B, the students in room 16 collected about how many cans? About as many cans as what other 2 homerooms combined? Well, in 16, they collected about 9,000 because it comes between 8 and 10, right? So that's going to be about 9,000. Now, room 12 collected about 5, and room 18 collected about 4,000. Well, 5 and 4,000 is going to give us 9,000. So for B, the students in room 16 collected about as many as the students in room 12 and 18 combined. So this third one, this is called a line graph here, and we're going to talk about this. This comes up again on actually a bunch of these come up on the questions, so make sure that you're paying attention on these guys. This line graph shows how Paul's test scores have changed during the year. On the first test, he got a 60, the second test, he got a 70, then about maybe 75, and then back down to a 70, and then up to an 80, that's good, and then up to an 85. What was Paul's test score on test 3? Well, we look at 3, we come all the way up. That's somewhere between 70 and 80, so that's like I said, 75. In general, are Paul's scores improving or getting worse? Well, if you take a look at, this is what a line graph is good for, is it's showing a slant upward, right? So in general, they're getting better. This guy down here at the bottom is called a circle graph here, where Dina spends her day at home, elsewhere, or at school. Altogether, how many hours are included in this graph? Well, we've got 12 hours here, 8 hours here, and 4 hours here. 8 and 4 is going to give us 12 hours. 12 plus 12 is 24. Notice we have to include all the hours in the day. Either she's at home, at school, or she's elsewhere, right? There's not really any other option that it could be. What fraction of Dina's day is spent at school? This is pretty easy to determine because it's 12 hours out of the 24, so it's half. Plus it looks like it's a half. Looks like it's a half. All right, so the practice problems are on page 230. Here are those practice problems, and you'll need those previous, use the information from the graphs in the lesson to answer each question. So those graphs that are on the other page, we'll be using these. Now, guys, I'm not gonna write these down, but I do want you to write these down at the top of your homework. So for A, how many more donuts were sold in February than in January? Let's turn back. If we go here, in January they sold 1, 2, 3, 4. In February they sold about 1, 2 more, right? So 2, each one represents, again, 10,000 donuts. So that's gonna be about 20,000 donuts that they sold in February. So if we go back and we look at the question, it says, about how many more donuts were sold in February than in January? About 20,000 donuts more were sold in February than in January. Again, answer with a complete sentence. B, how many aluminum cans were collected by all 4 homerooms? So we go down and we look at these guys and we know that, okay, well, they collected 5,000. I'm just gonna write, this is my book, so I'm allowed to write in it. 5,000, they collected 8,000, they collected 9,000, and they collected 4,000. So that's 9, that's 18, that's 26. So they collected 26,000 cans, 26,000 cans. Now that I did that, of course, I can't find my eraser. That would be my day. All right, so that next problem is, I give up. I really couldn't find my eraser. Oh. All right, there we go. Okay, so if I don't erase it now, I'll forget, so. All right, so the next one is, on which test was Paul's score lower than his score on the previous test? Well, if you go and you look at this line graph, it's all going upward except for on test 4, he went down, right? He went from this upward trajectory and then he went down a little bit. So keep that in mind. All right, and then for D, what fraction of Dina's day was spent somewhere other than home or at school? Well, come and look at this. We see that it was 4 hours was spent out of 24 hours elsewhere. So the way that we would write that would be 4 hours. Remember, our fractions are part over whole, right? So that one is gonna be 4 hours out of 24 hours, but we always reduce our fractions. So if we divide this by 4, divide this by 4, we end up with 1 out of 6. So 1/6 of her day was spent somewhere other than home or at school. All right, guys, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, great work, and I will see you in class. Thank you.